Over the next several weeks, the American International Podcast will be exploring some of the films that AIP presented exclusively in their television packages as part of their American International Television Division. Many of these films were imported from foreign markets, others were made specifically to be included as part of their television packages, and a few were picked up from other domestic distributors following their theatrical runs. In this series, we will be looking at films that are associated with AIP as a result of being presented in these television packages.
We're not talking about actors. We mean a real monster.
I brought her back. She'll live and I'll get her another body.
I know they're going to catch me, but don't let anyone see me like that. Please, doctor, help me!
Biologically speaking, it's of primary importance that man should want to mate. Hey, that's...
You don't get all your kicks from surfing, do you?
We want to be free to ride our machines without being hassled by the man. And we want to get loaded.
You think you're going to make a slave of the world? I'll see you in hell first.
The American International Podcast.
Are you ready?
Hello and welcome to the American International Podcast. I'm Cheryl Lightfoot.
And I'm Jeff Markin.
And join us as we travel through space to go back in time in Voyage to the Prehistoric Planet from 1965. Another movie in our look at American International Television.
Voyage to the Prehistoric Planet was derived from a Russian film called Planeta Bur, which translates as Planet of Storms. And that film was directed by Pavel Klushantsev. The English inserts were directed by Curtis Harrington, who is credited as John Sebastian. The original film, Planeta Bur, was written by Aleksandr Kazantsev from his novel, with the English quote-unquote translation and new inserts apparently written by Curtis Harrington. Voyage to the Prehistoric Planet was produced by George Edwards, Roger Corman, and Stephanie Rothman for Filmgroup.
Voyage to the Prehistoric Planet stars Basil Rathbone as Professor Hartman, Faith Domergue as Dr. Marsha Evans, Vladimir Emelyanov as Commander Brendan Lockhart, Georgi Zhzhyonov as Hans Walters, Gennadi Vernov as Andrei Ferneau, Georgi Tek as Dr. Kern, Yuri Sarantsev as Alan Sherman, and John Bix as Robot John. Most of the credits on the US version of the movie have fake names in order to hide the fact that the film was made in Russia. I wasn't able to find a listing of the voice actors, but apparently it wasn't the names listed on the film's opening credits. Among all those fake names, only John Bix has another movie credit.
The film opens with the credit sequence over a series of paintings. The paintings kind of look like alien landscapes, or maybe I'm thinking that because this is Voyage to the Prehistoric Planet, but they're really sort of abstract.
They do suggest some sort of plant life. They're by the artist John Klein, who, according to one book that I read, has disowned these paintings. And he currently owns a shop here in Phoenix. At the time the book I was reading was written, he did.
After the credit sequence and the film proper starts, a narrator tells us that the year is 2020, and that the moon has been explored and colonized, and the next space goal is about to be reached, the first landing on the planet Venus.
Boy, if they really knew what 2020 was like, they wouldn't have been so optimistic.
He also says that scientists profoundly hope that life similar to that on Earth may be found, because on this planet, the physical conditions are like that of Earth's.
Okay, that's not true. It's 900 degrees average on Venus. And, I mean, we are in Phoenix, and it does feel about that hot, but it's not. The credits go on to say that 3 rocket ships have traveled 200 million miles and are rapidly approaching their destination.
The 3 rockets are called the Sirius, the Vega, and the Capella. That 200 million miles might be total per ship because at its closest, Venus is only 25 million miles away from Earth.
Unless they waited till it was at its furthest.
Or maybe they just didn't start from Earth.
Oh, that's true. Because their command center is called the Lunar 7, and it's located, as you might expect, on the moon. Or around the moon. And though we start with 3 ships, unfortunately, the Capella is instantly atomized by a meteorite. Over on the Lunar 7, Professor Hartman gets the bad news. And then we cut to the Sirius, where 3 of the astronauts, are trying to understand why it had to happen.
They're all kind of in a state of shock. They had only just spoken with the crew of the Capella, and they mentioned that they were just so close to their goal of landing on Venus when this happened. It just doesn't make sense.
Professor Hartman instructs the Sirius and the Vega, the other ship, to go into orbit around Venus and report back on conditions on the planet's surface. Andrei Ferneau, one of the Sirius astronauts, wants to take their ship and see Venus with his own eyes, not just send the robot down. The other 2, Commander Brendan Lockhart and Hans Walters, are hesitant, but we all know they're going to do it no matter what. Andre, however, thinks that Professor Hartman would approve of this impulsive plan.
Then we go aboard the Vega to meet their crew. Dr. Kern is working on the robot, and Dr. Marsha Evans is watching.
She's elsewhere in the ship.
And then she reports the plan to Lunar 7, and she wants to make a change to the plans.
Sherman, Kern, and the robot will take the module down, and Marsha Evans will stay behind to keep the Vega in orbit. That's the new plan.
And she informs Professor Hartman that there is going to be a change of plan. Dr. Kern and Alan Sherman will be taking the robot down to the planet's surface, and Marsha will stay on the Vega to maintain communications with Lunar 7.
And to keep it in orbit. She tells him the Sirius crew is also going to the surface. When Hartman hears this, he's concerned about Marsha being left alone on the ship while everyone else is down on the planet's surface. But Marsha said she never intended to go down to Venus anyway, and she's sure she can handle it. Hartman tells one of his men to go get her mental health test just to check it out. Then Sherman chimes in to remind the professor that ladies are tougher than men. Doesn't he know that? The man returns with Marsha's test, and Hartman looks it over, and then he approves the plan.
So Hartman then calls into the Sirius to update them of this new plan, and it's all confirmed that the Vega crew will land first in the landing module, and then Sirius will follow. So as the Sirius enters the planet Venus's atmosphere, they're checking their scopes, and all they're really seeing is smoke and ash. Andre reports seeing a spot of red, and Hans jokes that the red spot could be Hades.
We also wonder if it could be a city. And then we see Dr. Evans recording her thoughts. The men are going to gather all possible data, except the most important questions. Does life of any kind exist on Venus? And if so, what kind? I mean, I'm sure if it does, they'll find it.
The Sirius crew is now listening to the chatter as the Vega's landing module makes its way to the surface. They speak of black smoke, no white smoke, and that they're turning over controls to Robot John. They say the area is strange. This is truly a prehistoric planet. They see a hard spot on which to land, so they give the coordinates.
There's a spot 300 meters southwest of their location that they are supposed to pilot their craft to.
But whoops, there's water underneath them, and then there's the sound of a splash.
Concerned with this radio silence, Dr. Evans calls Commander Lockhart, but he tells her that the men are surely fine and that everyone should just go get some rest. The Sirius crew try in vain to raise Kern and Sherman on the comms. Lockhart tells his men to prepare the ship. Those men are likely in trouble and need their help. He tells Marsha that she should just have faith.
Professor Hartman then calls from Lunar 7, telling them that they can discontinue the mission at their own discretion, and that under no condition are they to risk their lives. The commander replies and says that they will continue as planned. Professor Hartman wishes them luck, and the Sirius heads to the planet's surface. When they land, Andre says it feels strange to have weight.
And they can hear something from outside, or at least Andre can. It's a strange siren song. To him, it sounds like a woman singing. Hans and Andre exit the ship and start exploring. They find evidence of water. There's a puddle on the planet's surface. And then they get a message from Marsha. Her radar has picked up two objects, one metallic and moving in the area where the Vega had intended to land.
So, planning to find them and pick them up, Commander yells to Andre to come back, but Andre is busy. He's been grabbed by some tentacles. He cries out for help, and Commander and Hans move out after him.
He's had his legs snagged by some giant plant's tendrils, and those tendrils don't let go so easily. Andre nearly chokes. But the men fight it off.
Now that he's free, Andre wants to take a picture of his former captor, but the plant closes in on itself.
That's just like my cats when I'm trying to take a picture of their faces. They never let me do it. Andre says that they should take that plant back with them and put it in the zoo, but they don't. They go back in the ship and call Dr. Evans, asking for a more precise location of where the metallic object is located. She gives them directions to a site 32 miles away. Lockhart says they have to go by air, and then he asks if the car is ready. I didn't understand that at first, but it will become evident soon. Andre says the car is ready, but he really wishes there was a 4-lane highway they could take.
And now we meet up with Kern and Sherman. They've almost finished putting the robot back together when they're suddenly attacked by lizard plant swap creature things.
I said they're attacked by two men in rubber dinosaur suits.
The creatures are shot, and the robot is finished. Then they start to make their way to the rendezvous point.
Kern sends the robot up a mountain, where it throws down a line for the men. Later, we see the Sirius crew driving their hovercraft a few inches above the Venusian surface, And I have to say, this is a really cool thing. This is probably my favorite thing about the whole movie is this hover car, because it's not an effect. It seems to be real, and it seems to be like really gliding above the surface of Venus. While they're driving, Andre spots an apatosaurus, and then they stop so that he can go up to it and get a blood sample. They recommend that he gets it from the tail so it doesn't see him.
They make another call into Marsha up in the Vega, and she informs them that Kern and Sherman are headed in their direction. Speaking of whom, Sherman is getting tired and wants to rest, but Dr. Kern says they have limited oxygen and must keep going.
Yeah, they have to walk. They don't have a hover car. And Sherman's suit was apparently slashed, and he might have an infection. But as Kern says, they must keep going. The Sirius crew, having gotten their dinosaur blood, have stopped again. This time they're by the seashore. They heard that human-like song again. They think it might be a girl or a monster. Lockhart thinks it's possible that other men may have explored the area before they got there, but Walters isn't sure.
Now we're back with Dr. Kern and Sherman, and they're traversing a rocky landscape with a waterfall. The robot is having difficulties getting through. It says its magnetism is in danger and needs protection. Sherman is still trying to stop and rest, and Dr. Kern still won't let him. The robot locates a cave and tells Kern to bring Sherman there, where there's no water that will hurt the robot.
Both men are laying on the ground now, and they're both not doing very good. Kern tells the robot to make sure that the others can find them. Then he starts babbling something about mathematics, proving probabilities, before his lights go out too. Sherman comes to briefly and calls out for Marsha. He also tells Robot John to help the others find them, and Robot John leaves them there. I guess he doesn't need to shelter from the rain anymore?
Back up on the Vega, Marsha is still trying to contact her crew on the ground, and she's still not getting a signal. So she radios the Sirius crew. The commander says that he can tell by the tone of her voice that something is wrong. No, really? She says that she can't get a hold of Sherman and Kern, and Commander tells her to just keep trying.
The men are in the hover car where Walters is trying all their frequencies to try to reach John the robot. And they finally do. They get their location and the status of the men. Robot John reports that the men do not speak. They do not move. Commander Lockhart orders the robot to save the men. First, he must get some medication, one tablet out of one tube. The robot picks it up and drops it on the ground, dumping the tablets all over the place. But he's able to pick one up and slowly, very slowly, drop it into the open mouth of Kern. Then John is ordered to give Kern some water, which he does by clumsily dumping it all over his face. And then he closes Kern's helmet.
Then we go back to the Sirius crew in their hover car. It's currently being attacked by a flying animal, kind of a pterodactylish thing. It kind of looks like the giant claw from that other movie.
That's what I was thinking. Whatever it is, it buzzes over their hover car and knocks askew the radar thingy that's spinning on top of it. This spins the car around and leaves the men blind. They don't know which direction they're going. So they call Marsha for help. And she does what she can, but she's not really able to fix their hovercraft.
Now they're on the water, but they're still under attack. So they pull the plug on the ship and it takes on water.
Very interesting choice. I guess they're in spacesuits, so it doesn't really matter if they have oxygen or not.
Then Marsha has lost contact with the Sirius as well. She calls over to Lunar 7 to report, and she asks Professor Hartman if she should land. And Professor Hartman replies that it's important that, but he's cut off at that point.
Now, she's out of communication with everybody. But Professor Hartman didn't want her to go down to the surface.
No, we're at Lunar 7, and he's saying that under no circumstances should she go to the planet's surface. But she never receives that message, and she's not sure what to do.
She monologues to herself about how she will go down to the surface after the next orbit. She feels she must go to them. However, they're fine. The men in the Sirius are exploring underwater. They see a possible underwater city with even streets and a fish with the tail of a shark and the head of a dolphin. Andre, being the impulsive one, bounces off alone as Lockhart tells him to not go too far. Andre finds an octopus and a garden in the shade.
He also finds a cave. He says the entrance looks like it's been carved, and inside he finds a really cool rock. Hans and Commander join him, and Commander finds an idol with ruby eyes.
It looks like the winged creature that had just attacked them. So they conclude there was a civilization there at one point.
Back with Kern and Sherman, they're watching Robot John build a bridge for them to cross a valley.
I guess they're better now.
The robot pulls down a tree, which crosses over the two sides of the canyon, and they all start across, having the robot play some music as they go.
The Sirius crew, done exploring underwater, drag their hover car to the shore. They light a fire to help drive out the soggy car interior. Walters checks, and luckily the battery is still operational, but the radio is not working. Commander Lockhart says that they've proved the planet was or is populated. Walter says that perhaps to the underwater creatures, they themselves are the monsters. And then they hear that siren song again, and Andre goes off to compose a little poetry for his fair maiden.
He's looking down at his cool rock as he voices the poem to the mysterious owner of the voice that only he is hearing.
It was very sappy. But now it's time to get back in the car and drive off. Now Sherman and Kern have found another cave to hang out in. The crew notice that it's getting dark all of a sudden. They look outside their cave and notice an ash cloud. There's a volcano that's about to erupt.
Sherman is thrilled. He thinks it's a beautiful sight and he wants to gather some samples. So he and Kern go to what is supposed to be a safer vantage point to do so.
However, it's not. The lava is rising and it's too high already. They order Robot John to cross the lava flow, and they hop on his shoulders so that they can cross in comfort. Robot John starts talking to someone. The men conclude that it's Commander Lockhart. The robot takes another step and then announces his self-defense mechanism has kicked in. He must throw off any extra weight.
Meaning Kern and Sherman.
Mm-hmm.
Kern tells Sherman to deactivate the mechanism by opening his chest compartment.
Well, he can't find the mechanism, and the robot starts to dump Sherman off. Kern tries to hold on to him, but luckily the Sirius crew pulls up just in time to rescue them. It's a happy reunion for all, except for Robot John. He topples into the lava. Kern takes a moment to grieve him. Robot John called out his name as he died. Although I didn't hear that.
Now the five of them are just sitting around. Hans is working on the car, and someone comes up and finds a picture of his family. He has triplets that he hasn't named. He's numbered them instead. It's easier to keep track of them that way. Dr. Kern is curious about the signs of intelligent life that the Sirius crew had found, and they remind Kern that he himself had seen those lizard people.
And they wonder if the lights that they saw from the ship was from a city again.
Meanwhile, Andre is still daydreaming about that woman's voice he keeps hearing, when tentacles come up behind him. Here we go again.
Oh no, another monster is attacking. But no, it's just Hans. He's donned some rubber monster costume pieces to take advantage of the gullible Andre, and everybody has a good laugh.
So they all hop into the hovercraft and head back to the landing site, but they have stops to make en route. They gather animal and mineral samples. They take a lizard, but leave that dinosaur thing alone. Returning to the car, Andre says that if they were to keep exploring, they'd probably find the source of this sound that he keeps hearing. But there's not time for that nonsense. They've got to head back to the landing site.
Soon they reach the Sirius. They hear the siren song again. They start loading their samples and gear into the ship. Once on board, they play a recorded message from Marsha. She's left a message on their answering machine, I guess. She says that she's going to land on Venus against orders. She's ignited the propellant, and she's planning to leave in 1 minute. The men are very distressed to hear this. Dr. Evans could be lost, she could have crashed, and they can't call Professor Hartman from the Sirius. Only the Vega has the power to communicate with Lunar 7.
Dr. Kern laments that this is the worst thing that could possibly happen, and they'll have to make a plan. It's possible that she may have disintegrated upon entry to the planet's atmosphere, but maybe not.
That's the best case scenario?
So the plan is that Commander and Hans will launch the Sirius up to the Vega's orbit to see if the Vega is still there. And if they make it, they can contact Professor Hartman, and either way, let Sirius know what they find or don't find.
But then a storm hits. The men check their instruments and notice that the ship is no longer level. The storm is washing away the ground beneath the ship. This is a serious problem. The men start to lighten the load by taking crates of gear and whatever out of the ship to leave behind on the surface. They see that they don't have much time, so they decide to light the ship for blastoff.
The commander gets a notification on his radar, and it appears to be the Vega still in orbit. He asks Hans what was the timestamp on that message that was sent, and based on this information, he thinks that the Vega might still be in orbit. So they try to give Marsha a call, and she answers.
I love how they had an intense zoom in on Hans's face as he's pondering this.
Marsha says that she received a message from Professor Hartman just as she was about to start the landing cycle to the planet's surface, and he ordered her to wait no matter how she felt about it, and that she's grateful now that he made that call.
She seems a little doped up here.
So the commander reports to the ground crew that Marsha is fine. Kern and Sherman eagerly climb aboard, but they instruct Andre to throw the switch on the weather station before he comes up.
It's a small module on land. He can't get the door to it open, so he first tries bashing it with a small rock, and it doesn't work. Then he takes his special rock out of his pack and uses that to bash open the door to the weather station. He manages to open the door and start the station, but the rock he's holding is starting to crumble. He flakes off the rest of it, and inside he finds a carving of a humanoid face with delicate features and black eyes.
Oh, I said it was a doll's head on a plate.
I was going to say plaque, but...
This proves that there's human-like life on this planet, or at least there once was.
He tries to tell the men they can't leave, but they haul his dumbass on board anyways, and then they blast off. After they're gone, we're still on the surface. We look at a pool of water, and then a creature walks upon two legs towards it. We only see its reflection, but it seems to be a lady, like on the carving. This lady stands there and does the sun salute yoga pose. Then we see the ship rocketing through space as a voiceover intones. And so man's search for intelligent life on other planets and in other galaxies will continue, for that is the heart and soul of that great adventure, the exploration of the universe. And that's the end. Welcome back to the American International Podcast, where we are talking about Voyage to the Prehistoric Planet from 1965.
Roger Corman had purchased the rights of Planeta Bur and used footage to create both Voyage to the Prehistoric Planet and Voyage to the Planet of Prehistoric Women. According to Mark Thomas McGee's book, Faster and Furiouser, Corman also used clips from Planeta Bur and Queen of Blood. Queen of Blood and Voyage to the Prehistoric Planet both featured Basil Rathbone in the new inserted scenes, and Corman had Rathbone shoot both at the same time.
Rathbone was scheduled to work 2 days total for both films, but the shoot went into overtime, and Rathbone had to miss a meal. When he later tried to sue Corman for his overtime pay and a penalty for making him miss that meal, he lost because Corman said Rathbone hadn't learned his lines, and he also had outtakes of Rathbone insisting on getting it over with, making it Rathbone's fault that those rules were broken.
The scenes with both Rathbone and Domergue were shot at the same time as Queen of Blood, another Americanized science fiction film directed by Curtis Harrington using a Soviet sci-fi movie as a base. Basil Rathbone and Faith Domergue shot their scenes wearing the same costumes and shot on the same set used for Queen of Blood.
Harrington later recalled, "It had to do with a couple of people orbiting the planet Venus. So I had, instead of the Soviet actors, Faith Domergue orbiting the planet Venus. Then all the scenes with the Russians were dubbed in English. She was in touch with Basil Rathbone, who was supposedly on a moon station. That's all I shot. I shot about a day or two with her as she was in that ship orbiting around the planet Venus, and all the rest of it was just dub stuff."
While Harrington considered Queen of Blood good enough to keep his name on it, in Voyage to the Prehistoric Planet, he is credited as John Sebastian, a name he derived from that of composer Johann Sebastian Bach.
Stephanie Rothman worked as an associate producer on Voyage to the Prehistoric Planet and Queen of Blood. In an interview for the Center for Oral History at UCLA, she said, "Curtis was very cordial, and I enjoyed watching him work. And, I learned something from watching how he functioned on the set and how the production went along." She continued, "He was comfortable having me there, and I was grateful to be there to learn from him."
Voyage to the Prehistoric Planet did not receive a theatrical release, but was syndicated as part of AITV's Amazing Adventure 67 and its Sci-Fi 65 packages.
However, there were rumors that AIP planned to put Voyage to the Prehistoric Planet on a double bill with Psycho Circus, also known as Circus of Fear, in 1967, but those were never substantiated. Until, in 1988, film archivist Mike Vraney discovered a 35mm black and white internegative at the UCLA Film Archive. This cut of the film was 5 minutes longer than the television version and contained a scene where Andre the Impulsive walks into the Venusian Sea, sees a beautiful young woman, and takes off his spacesuit to frolic through the water with her. It was possibly a fantasy or a daydream. Then the woman subsequently rescues him from an alien family who have tied him up. Presumably, if true, this is the cut of the film that was intended to be shown theatrically.
Corman repurposed some of these scenes featuring Andre from Planeta Bur for Voyage to the Planet of Prehistoric Women, which added a squadron of Venusian women, led by Mamie Van Doren, to the Russian film scenes. The original material for that film was directed by Peter Bogdanovich, who also narrated some sequences.
In a retrospective on Soviet science fiction film, British director Alex Koch wrote that Voyage to the Prehistoric Planet was, quote, bought for U.S. distribution by Roger Corman, who proceeded to cut it up and use the pieces for 2 other films, an act of cinematic cannibalism that gave us Curtis Harrington's Voyage to the Prehistoric Planet and Peter Bogdanovich's equally classic Voyage to the Planet of Prehistoric Women.
Creature Feature gave the film 2 out of 5 stars, saying that it looked like it was spliced together with Elmer's glue.
And writing for AllMovie, critic Paul Gaeta described the film as a simplistic science fiction adventure that was imaginative and highly visual with some impressive special effects. And that's all we could uncover about this movie, this very strange movie. So I guess now there's nothing left to do but talk about how we felt about it.
Well, I wouldn't say this is a particularly good movie, but it looks good. The print we watched is all washed out, and it's really in need of a restoration of some sort. But the effects itself, beyond the rubber-suited monsters and such, are actually pretty well done.
I thought so too. I love that hover car. That was so cool.
Yeah, that one piece of equipment added a lot of production value to this, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes me curious to see the actual Russian version. Not enough that I'm going to track it down or anything. But
I might watch it if you had it.
I think I do. But I imagine it's probably at least a little bit of a better film.
I would think so too. Well, one of the reasons I want to watch the Russian version, subtitled of course, is because I don't think the English dubbing was good. Number one, the voices are terrible. That seems to be a uniform problem with AIP. They don't get actors to dub the film. They just get random people to speak those lines in a flat affect.
And another thing with their dubbing process is that these often aren't literal translations. They just look at the film and try to figure out what's happening and write a script that kind of matches the actor's lip movements and go with that, which is why sometimes people ramble on when they're speaking, or at other times stop in the middle of a sentence and start up again.
And that makes the plot less sensible. That's why I think in the Russian version, you could probably tell better what's happening. We had to stop the movie and have a long discussion about the logistics of their rescue mission, because it just didn't make sense from what they were saying.
It doesn't make sense anyway. It doesn't make sense to send a ship out 200 million miles or whatever away without communications capabilities.
Right. Only one of the ships was capable of communicating. Maybe the Capella was, but it was blown to bits early in the movie. So we don't know.
That's not totally true, because when the Sirius is in orbit, they do get a call from Hartman.
Right.
So it's just once they're on the surface, they lose communications with Lunar 7, but they can still communicate with the Vega.
True. But only the Vega can communicate with Lunar 7.
Because it's still in orbit.
I guess that makes sense.
It makes sense in terms of what we saw in the movie. I don't know if it makes sense in reality, but
right.
In the reality of film, it makes sense. Maybe.
Mm-hmm. I also thought that Faith Domergue had a very strange affect herself in this movie. She seemed pretty out of it. Her voice was very dreamy, very monotone. Her hair was very big. It just seemed like she wasn't in space at all, that she was just at some sort of space camp.
No, it seemed like she was pretty spaced out to me.
She sounded like a Stepford wife at one point.
Well, I think she was there for a day's work and just reciting her lines, because there's not really a lot of emotion in what she's saying.
Right, but she should be feeling emotion because those are her crew members, her mates, possibly dead, or at least stranded on the planet's surface for all she knows.
But she didn't even know the actors. They were in another film that had been made years before. So this was just a paycheck.
Right, and that's pretty obvious. I have a feeling that the original scenes of the person in the spaceship, in the Russian version, it's a woman named Marsha. There might have been a little more acting going on there. What did you think of this story?
I'm curious about the story and how close it relates to the Russian version, because we don't even know if the footage that we saw was played in the same order. They could have taken scenes out of order to make their story. We don't know.
But we did see the progression of the two separated crews coming back together. So it probably wasn't cut up too much.
I'd like to know more about Robot John's story. I'll bet it was a lot more interesting in the Russian version of the film.
Well, I guess Voyage to the Planet of the Prehistoric Women features him as well.
Well, it's using the same footage, but I don't think it's a prequel or a sequel. I think it's just another film with the same elements.
Well, it does feature the Andre character, though. So it's somehow tangentially related to the other movie.
Well, we won't be watching that one for a while until we look at our next group of AITV films sometime in the future. So I guess we'll just have to ponder that one, unless we decide to watch it in our spare time.
I doubt that. Although it does look kind of silly. We did see the trailer for it, and there's a lot of hot mermaid action. All right, Jeff, so using our AIP scale, where A is awesome, I is intermediate, and P is pathetic, how would you rate Voyage to the Prehistoric Planet?
Well, a lot of the stuff that's going for this film is in its original production. Like I said, the hover car and the look of the robot, that's all pretty cool stuff that looks better than we're seeing in a lot of American films from the same time period. We can tolerate the dubbing and the diction and make the excuse that this wound up going straight to television. And I didn't hate this movie, but I certainly didn't love it. It's definitely not an A picture. But all things considered, while it does drag at parts, I think it's a pretty decent film, mostly because of how it looks. It looks better than it is, and it's kind of interesting to watch from that aspect. I wasn't really invested in the story per se, but if this film was to be remastered and with bright colors, I think it would look fantastic. It still probably wouldn't be an A, but I would at least keep it where I'm going to put it as an I intermediate film. What are your thoughts, Cheryl?
I can't help but agree with you. Although I think with a little more emphasis on the scientific aspect of the movie, we wouldn't find ourselves on Venus trudging around in the 900-degree heat and poisonous fog. We might find ourselves on a different planet altogether with some conditions that are more hospitable to human life. But it would be awesome to see it in its original glory or restored glory, because the gadgets and the gizmo, the ships are really cool. When we saw the men getting in and out of the Sirius, it looked like a real rocket, real spaceship.
We've been watching this other AI TV products, so we're comparing it to Larry Buchanan ships, which look like and are toys.
So yeah, this movie made 10 years prior to Mars Needs Women exceeds it in every aspect of technical effects. But I would say that either subtitle it or hire actors to do the dubbing if they want to improve it, because the voices contain no emotion. It just was so boring listening to these people. So I thought the story was interesting and I could get invested in it a little bit. It did help that the movie was very short, only an hour and 13 minutes. So like you said, it did not drag on.
I said it did at parts.
Well, it didn't have enough time to get really bogged down with certain sequences. So I will give this an I too. I could maybe bump it up to an A if we saw the original with no dubbing, just subtitles and a remastered print. But I can't do that now. I didn't appreciate the inserted parts. I thought they were there's just minimal attention given to the insert parts. It just seemed like we have to shoot this real quick and we'll cram it in there and nobody will care because it's just a dumb TV movie. So if a little more care had been put into that aspect of the film, I think it would have improved it. But that's probably the worst part of the movie is the dubbing and the inserts.
I'm thinking that they had Faith Domergue made up to look like Marsha in the Russian version, because I can't think of any other reason why they would have her looking like that with her hair done
so tall.
So, yeah, it's a very odd hairstyle, but I don't know, maybe that's Russian fashion, or was at the time.
I couldn't see how you could put a helmet over that hairdo. It just never would have worked. She would have been starving for oxygen or exploded or something, because there's no way a helmet is going over her hair helmet. So yeah, it's an I movie just because of the Russian parts. That really saved it. If Roger Corman had shot this all with original actors, I don't think it would have been that good.
It would have been a totally different movie, that's for sure.
Well, I think that's all we have to say about Voyage to the Prehistoric Planet. For the American International Podcast, I'm Cheryl Lightfoot.
And I'm Jeff Markin.
And until next time, stay tuned.
Follow the American International Podcast on Instagram and Letterboxd at AIP_pod and on Facebook at facebook.com/American International Podcast.
The American International Podcast is produced and edited by Jeff Markin.
A man whose mind is distorted by hatred.
And Cheryl Lightfoot.
A girl hungry for too many things.
The American International Podcast is part of the Pop Culture Entertainment Network.